This photo is not edited, look closer at the Charlie's Angels blooper. Something about this photo just feels off. And once it clicks, it is impossible to unsee. At first glance, everything looks perfectly normal, classic action, flawless styling, that signature energy from Charlie's Angels that fans have loved for decades. But look closer, because hidden right there in plain sight is a blooper so subtle that even devoted fans completely missed it. And given everything happening with this franchise right now, with Cameron Diaz, Drew Barrymore, and Lucy Liu reportedly returning for a brand new reboot, there has never been a better moment to go back and examine what the original film was really hiding. Once you spot this mistake, it raises even bigger questions about what else might be lurking in scenes everyone assumed were perfect. Stick around, because this one changes everything. The blooper hidden in plain sight. A photograph from the 2000 film contains a peculiar inconsistency that rewards close attention in a way that most casual viewings would never prompt. At first glance, everything about the image looks entirely ordinary, the kind of framing that appears in countless films without attracting any particular scrutiny. Nothing about the initial impression suggests anything unusual is happening. The photograph shows Knox's father with an arm positioned around Charlie in one frame, creating a composition that reads as natural and unremarkable, exactly the kind of casual image that might appear in a family album or a social gathering. But then the same sequence presents another shot, and in that shot, the arms appear above the head rather than around Charlie, directly contradicting what the previous frame had established. That shift, small as it sounds when described plainly, creates a genuine puzzle once noticed, because a single continuous moment in a film cannot show two different physical positions at the same time without something having gone wrong somewhere in the process of assembling the scene. The error appears during a moment that carries genuine narrative weight, which makes the oversight both more understandable and more fascinating in equal measure. This is the pivotal sequence where the Angels begin to understand that Knox is actually targeting Charlie, a realization that shifts the entire direction of the story and changes what has been understood about the threat facing the people at the center of the film. Dylan recalls a photograph, and the camera moves in on the name Townsend in a deliberate, tension-building progression designed to guide attention toward the truth behind Knox's intentions. At the timestamp 1 hour and 5 seconds, the inconsistency sits quietly in plain sight while everything else about the scene works hard to direct focus elsewhere. The shot immediately before the final photograph frame clearly shows Knox's father's arm wrapped around Charlie, while all other shots within that same sequence show the arms raised overhead instead. How that contradiction made it through the editing process without being flagged is a question without a simple answer, but the most likely explanation involves the way attention naturally behaves during scenes carrying significant emotional momentum. The discovery did not come through any official production acknowledgement. Instead, sharp-eyed viewers doing exactly what devoted film fans tend to do, returning to scenes that matter, pausing at specific moments, asking whether everything actually lines up, eventually cataloged the error on MovieMistakes.com, where film enthusiasts document continuity problems with enough precision that others can verify the findings for themselves. The community built around that kind of close watching has become a repository for errors that might otherwise remain obscure indefinitely. The legacy that made this matter. Created by Ivan Goff and Ben Roberts, the original Charlie's Angels television series premiered on March 21, 1976, and almost immediately something about the show felt different from everything else on primetime television. The 72-minute pilot film drew a 54% share in the Nielsen ratings, meaning more than half of all television sets in use that night were tuned in to watch three women chase criminals for a mysterious boss whose face nobody ever got to see. Kate Jackson, Farrah Fawcett, and Jacqueline Smith starred as the original Angels, and the energy all three brought to their roles felt fresh in a way audiences had not quite experienced before in that format. Critics were quick to label the show as surface-level entertainment, but that dismissal always raised a quiet question: was that criticism a fair reading of what the show was doing, or was it discomfort with the idea of three women commanding roles traditionally filled by men? The series consistently presented three women who worked as equals, earned their own money, made independent decisions, and operated without needing anyone to rescue or guide them. The franchise returned in 2000 with Cameron Diaz, Drew Barrymore, and Lucy Liu bringing a new generation of Angels to the screen with bigger action sequences, more elaborate stunts, and a visual energy the original television budget could never quite achieve. Audience response confirmed the core idea still held real value. The 2000 film connected strongly enough to justify a sequel, with Charlie's Angels, Full Throttle arriving in 2003, and the two films together grossing a combined $596 million against a combined budget of $261 million. And now, in 2026, the story is not finished. Sony has hired writer Pete Chiarelli, known for The Proposal and Crazy Rich Asians, to develop a new Charlie's Angels reboot for the current era, and industry sources report that Diaz, Barrymore, and Liu are all expected to return. Geek Tyrant: It remains unclear whether they will return as leads or pass the torch to a new generation, but their involvement alone has already sparked considerable excitement among fans who never stopped caring about this franchise. Joe Blow: The 4 stars, including Demi Moore, who played villain Madison Lee in Full Throttle, recently reunited in a Vanity Fair video, marking their first time together since Liu's Hollywood Walk of Fame ceremony in 2019. Variety: The chemistry between them, completely undiminished, reminded everyone exactly why these women captured the world's imagination in the first place. Behind the camera, why bloopers happen. Principal photography on Charlie's Angels began in January 2000, and from the outset the production operated at a pace and scale that made precision a constant challenge. Lucy Liu later recalled that preparation for the fight sequences involved training 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, a commitment that speaks to the ambition behind the choreography and the standard the production had set. A schedule like that creates cumulative fatigue over weeks of shooting, and cumulative fatigue is exactly the kind of condition under which continuity details begin slipping past the people whose job it is to catch them. MCG's style emphasized energy, boldness, and a constant push toward intensity. Cameron Diaz described an environment where the director's enthusiasm never dropped, and his excitement functioned as the driving force moving everyone through the work. High-energy direction produces performances with genuine life in them, but it also creates conditions where the pace of moving from setup to setup can outrun the capacity to check every small detail before committing to the next shot. On-set dynamics introduced additional complications. A production assistant who worked on the film described significant disruption arising when Bill Murray began rewriting scenes without consulting the director or fellow producers, placing new pages in trailers and creating confusion across the stage as cast and crew found themselves facing material that differed from what had been prepared. Conflict on set does not just affect morale, it actively redirects attention in ways that make small mistakes harder to catch and easier to carry forward into the final cut. Other bloopers you probably missed. Beyond the photograph inconsistency, multiple other mistakes found their way into the final cuts of both films. Lucy Liu's footwear provided one of the more jarring examples. A sequence requiring flat shoes for climbing a rope up castle walls cut almost immediately to a fight taking place in 4-inch heels, with no explanation for the transformation between shots meant to represent continuous events. Drew Barrymore's face told a similar story. Following the headquarters explosion at the 59-minute mark, clear-suit coverage showed the physical impact of the blast, but the final shot of that same sequence presented a completely clean face, as though the explosion had left no trace at all. At the 1-hour, 20-minute mark, a rope and clamps used for climbing appeared clearly in close-up shots and then vanished entirely in the shots that followed. Props essential to the physical action of a scene do not simply disappear between setups without someone noticing, yet here the finished film preserved exactly that absence. A cameraman's reflection appeared clearly in a television screen at the 33-minute mark, breaking the invisible wall separating the world inside the film from the process of making it. Reflective surfaces have been the source of crew visibility mistakes across countless productions, and this particular reflection survived all the way to the finished cut. The stage ceiling became visible during the alley fight at the 25-minute mark, evidence of a camera angle that pushed slightly higher than the set was designed to accommodate, a miscalculation that can be nearly impossible to predict until footage comes back and reveals exactly where the constructed environment ends. The plot assigns specific significance to a pygmy nuthatch, making the bird's identity a detail with genuine narrative relevance. Yet at the 1-hour, 2-minute mark, an oriole appeared in its place. For most viewers, the distinction between bird species is not the kind of thing that registers without prompting, which is almost certainly why this substitution made it all the way to the final cut. Why these mistakes still matter. All of these details together create a picture of a production that was ambitious, energetic, and working at a scale and pace that made genuine perfection an unachievable target. None of these mistakes diminished the entertainment value that made both films connect with audiences, or undercut the performances at the center of the work. But each one serves as a quiet reminder that filmmaking is a fundamentally human process assembled from hundreds of decisions made under pressure, and that even when the finished product looks seamless from a comfortable distance, a closer look almost always finds traces of the effort, the complexity, and the occasional oversight that went into making it. With Sony now developing a new installment, Drew Barrymore's Flower Films banner responsible for the original film rumored to be involved, and the original angels expected to appear on screen together again, the movie blog audiences are going to be watching more closely than ever. Which raises one fascinating question: will the new film be any more airtight than the one that came before it? Or will sharp-eyed viewers, armed with pause buttons and frame-by-frame scrutiny, find brand new secrets hiding in plain sight? The answer, if history is any guide, is almost certainly yes.